Hi everyone, it's Nicole and I'm here to start my new mini album, I guess, for all the books that I read in the year 2020, except this year I'm going to do it in my reading planner. And I might do it another way. I'll talk about it later on in the video. But the first thing I did is I found one of my little book stamps that I had in my stash. And instead of every month taking out my number stamps and stamping out the numbers for that specific month, I decided to do the entire year. I did up to 110, I think. And that way, when I had number one out, I would do all the ones, not just one, 10 to 20, but I would do 21, 31, 41, 51. And then once I had the two outs, then I would do the row of 20 and then so on and so forth. And it went pretty quickly. I think it took me maybe half an hour, but that way the entire sheet is stamped out and I got it done for the year. Now every month all I need to do is just cut down the row of numbers and I'm ready to go. And with an 8.5 by 11 sheet, there was, I think, 11 books per row, and it seems that every time I stamped a whole row, there was at least one that I would mess up, that wouldn't stamp the whole book. So that way it works out that I have 10 per rows. Then I had gone through my letter stickers and I found some tiny stickers that I wanted to use, and I just spelled out what I read in January. Now, this is going to be the perfect project to use up some of my scraps. So I just went in my scrap drawer, grabbed a whole bunch of scraps, and that's how I'm going to mat all the little photos. Now, I printed my photos on my PicFrame app, and that's just an app that you can get on, the App Store. I got the free one, and then there was one of the frames is 4 pictures in one, and I just played with the ratio, and the ratio is found on the first page until I found at the top, you'll see 1, 2 dots, 1. I just played with the ratio until I liked the size that my book would fit all the way in, because 1 to 1 is too square and the whole book wouldn't fit in. Now this time around, I forgot to write it down what the ratio was, but next time when I do it, I'm going to write down the ratio. And I just keep it with everything that I have for, when I work on my mini album. And then every month I just remember what ratio, if I don't remember, I just look and print my photos. Now, this album or this reading planner that I got only has a couple of dotted pages, and I was trying to think if I could put all the books that I read, because in the month of January I read 10 books. Now the left page with the row of books on the bottom, I really didn't have any plans for that anyway, so I decided that I was going to start on that page, and the first 2 pages I end up putting 3 books each, because the first page has the row of books at the bottom. The second page has, what I read in January. So I have a little bit less of an area. But then when I'm going to flip it over, I'm going to have a little bit more room, and I'm going to be able to put 4 books on the other page. Now, I'm going to mention at some point in this video that I think at some point I'm going to uncoil this reading planner, and I have some pages left over at the back of the book, and I'm going to put one at the beginning of the reading planner so I can put more books that are on my TBR. And then if I have enough, I'm going to put some, at every month, so that I'll have a little bit more room to do my books that I read in a month. Those pages were going to stay empty anyway, so I'm fine with putting what books I read right in my planner. But I know at some point these planners are probably going to get thrown out, so I have some other plans too, so that it is in my regular album. Now, I haven't decided if I'm going to do a 1-page spread or a 2-page spread, or whether it's going to be in my regular album or if I'm going to have a 12 by 12 album just dedicated to all my books. And I'm going to be working on that this week sometime. So you'll probably see the video within the next week on what I decide to do. So I mat all my photos using scraps, and then I have my little 5-star rating stamps or stamp, and I'm going to put it right next to the book. And I really like how that looks. And then the number of books, and the way I put it in the album or in my reading planner, I actually put them in the order that I read the books. So number 1 is the first book I read, and number 10 is the last book I read in that month. And when I start in February, I'll start with number 11. And then I'm going to use these sticker books that I got at Michael's, and they're for planners, and they're nice and flat. And that's one thing that I decided is in this album, I'm not going to put anything that has any kind of dimensions or dimension, because it's going to bulk up the album way too much. The other thing that I did was I was just taking strips. Basically, I could use washi tape for this, but I'm just deciding to use whatever I have in these little booklets for now until I use them all up. And then eventually, if I run out, then I will be using washi tape. And I make my little embellishment cluster where I put that little book with the number. Another thing that I get a lot of questions on is, where do I get the pictures of the book? Well, I am a Goodreads member, and by the way, the link is in the description box below to all my social media. As a matter of fact, Instagram, my blog, Twitter, everything is in the description box below. But I do have my Goodreads account, and I click on the book until you get the big picture, that it's blown up on your on your phone, and then I take a screen picture, and then I have the picture in my photos, and then I just bring it in with my pick frame app. I found that was the easiest way for me to get pictures of the books onto my camera, and then that way I was able to bring them into my pick frame app. Now I really like how the star rating and also the little cluster that I did, it really kind of puts a beginning and an end to where the book, I guess, all the embellishment and especially all the writing that I'm going to do for each book starts and ends. I really like how it really kind of makes a little page for that specific book. Now, this is a project that I'm really enjoying, but it's not something that I want to spend hours and hours and hours every month. So by just, a little bit of embellishment, a little bit, of matting the photo, and then the star rating, it's something that if it's not going to take me too long per month, I know that it's a project that I'm going to keep up and I'm going to finish. And in order to do that, what I try to do is basically as soon as the month ends and the other month begins, I do the month previously. So we're just at the beginning of February and I've already done the month of January, and that way I stay on top of it. Now, one thing I have to mention is that this reading planner, I can't use markers in them because it does bleed through. So I just went and got some pencil crayons. These are actually watercolors, but I'm not going to wet them. I'm just going to color them in because my regular crayons or pencil crayons were downstairs and I didn't feel like going downstairs, and I'm okay with that. I don't plan on putting water near my reading planner, so it should be all good. So now that I have sort of the guts of everything done, now I'm going to start and write down a little summary of every book. And this is where I'm going to tell you a little bit about every book that I read in the month of January. So the first one I read was Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. And this is an adult contemporary about a family and a tragedy that happens to their family, and then all the secrets that come out after that tragedy happens. It's a hard-hitting adult contemporary. I gave it 5 stars. Colleen Hoover never disappoints. The next book is the Bromance Book Club by Lissa Ray Adams, and this is an adult contemporary about a baseball player, and his marriage is on the rocks, and he joins a book club to try to save his marriage. I love this book. It was funny. It was cute. I gave it 4 stars. The third book I read, funny, is another adult contemporary, and it's The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman, and this is also an adult contemporary about a girl who works in a bookstore and finding out about a new family. I loved the new family dynamic and just the whole story. It was so cute. I love books about books. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was the next book in a series, Traitor to the Throne by Alwyn Hamilton. And this story continues the story of Amani and Jin, and I love this. Amani is a gunslinger. It's in the desert. It's fantasy, lots of adventure, lots of action. I love the main characters, love the story. I'm going to finish that series in the month of February. The next book I read is the beginning of the series. It's Ever the Hunted by Erin Summerall. And this is a young adult fantasy about a young girl whose father was killed. She has no food and gets caught with fresh meat, like a kill that she just killed, which is outlawed. And the penalty for that is sentenced to death. She makes a deal with the king's advisor to, instead of that, to catch Cohen, who is her childhood friend, sweetheart, for her father's murder. Love this story. Loved it so much. 4 stars. The next book I read is The Girl He Used to Know by Tracy Jarvis Graves. This is an adult contemporary about a woman who learns to navigate life with her situation, and she meets the love of her life, and they break up, and 10 years later, they meet again, and she's trying to convince him that, she's in therapy now, and she's going to do much better at communicating, and it's sort of their story, their love story. Such a hard-hitting book. Loved it. 5 stars. The next book is Our Stop, another adult contemporary, and this is a cute story about strangers that almost meet over and over. He finally sends her a message in the paper, and this is the development of their love story. Oh, I love this so much. 4 stars. The next one is Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer. This is a young adult fantasy about heroes and villains, but the line is very fine. Nova has infiltrated the heroes to take them down from the inside. This is the second book. Loved it. 4.5 stars. The next book is an adult erotic thriller about a girl who hasn't left her apartment in over 3 years because she fantasizes about committing murders. Then one day she feels like she doesn't have a choice. She has to leave her apartment, and it is so good. This is The Girl in 6E by A.E. Torrey. Love this book. The next book is the finale in the Percy Jackson series, The Last Olympian. Love this series. I am going to miss the whole bunch of characters, and especially Annabeth calling Percy Seaweed Brain. I just love the dynamic of those two and their whole crew. So that's it. That's all the 10 books that I read in January. And stay tuned. Now I'm going to come to you real time and just go through my reading planner and show you what I've updated in January. Okay, so I just finished the month of January, and I thought I would just go through and just show you what I've added in the month of January and a little bit in February, because I've already read 2 books in February. So as I'm finishing the books, I am coloring the books in, and I'm making sure that I'm dividing them between the 2 bookshelves, and not on purpose, but I've read 12 books up to now, 10 in January, and I did put 6 on each page. And as you can tell, the genre that I've read the most up to now is adult contemporary. For some reason, I'm on an adult contemporary kick, and I'm okay with it. The next one is young adult fantasy. I've read 4 of those, and I've read 1 middle grade and 1 adult thriller. And as I'm reading the books, I'm just making sure that I'm coloring it in. These are the books that are on my TBR that I want to read. Now, one thing that I did notice that I'll show you is I'm not using markers in here like normally I would be using markers to do my star ratings, but it goes through the page. So I decided to just use some crayons. So I've changed to crayons into here. So since I did this, got this ready, I've written down all 100 and I think I'm down to 129. Now what I've decided is I'm going to uncoil this, and I'm going to take some of these and put them over here so that I can add a little bit more books to my TBR, because I want more than 129. And if I would have been smart, I never thought of it till after the fact, I should have put this list here, the books I read, at the beginning, and then put the books on my TBR at the end because I had way more pages. But I'm going to uncoil this and recoil it at some point. But I just started putting, you know, the books here, and eventually I'll just move this forward. I did add 1 more category, which is middle grade, which is a hot pink. And that's what I'll do. I've put this at the back of the book since last time too. And I've put the name of the pencil crayon here. And if I think of new categories, I'll just add them right here and add a color. And then, so I've added all the books that I've read, and I've added my goal settings in here. I've added my January TBR. And what I'm doing, if you can look here, I started Wildcard in January, but I actually finished it in February. So let me see. Here, I finished coloring, so it's all full. So again, I've done my February TBR. I think there's 14 books on here. There's no way I'm going to be able to read 14 books. But it's just, those are the books I want to choose from. I have a couple on my Kindle, 1 that I'm listening to on audio, and the others are all books that I want to read. So, and I think 2 or 3 of them are over 500 pages. And I've added my books here that I read, and I like that I did this. It's simple, just, the rating. The only thing is if I read more than 10 books, although I guess I can go up to at least 11. I don't think I could do 4 here unless I covered some of the books. I guess I could do that, and I wouldn't have too much place to write, but I can do 4. I did it here. So that was fun. I like it in here, and I think that's how I'm going to do it. I thought I was going to be able to just use this side, but I didn't really have anything planned for this anyway. So probably in February, I'll do this part on this side, but it's fine there. I'm okay with it. I didn't want to move everything. I was okay with that. And it's everything that was in my other album. I don't know how full this is going to become till the end of the year, but at least for now, I'm going to do that. And I decided that instead of another album, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a page or maybe a double page spread that I'm going to put in my album and make an album that way, and not use some Project Life cards. I'll just do it scrapbooking style. I'll try that, and maybe, if I find I like this enough, then maybe I'll just do a couple of months in that and then stop. But I don't want to fall behind, so I'll do one for January for sure. And then I've been keeping track. So in January, I started 3 series. This I started in February, but so I started 3 series, or maybe I started it in January, but I finished it in February. I finished Warcross I finished in February, but I finished one series in January. And I read one book that was over 500 pages, so I'll have to sort of pick up the pace on that if I want to read 16. I don't want to leave that, especially till the end of the year. I read 2 books on my Kindle and started a third one and finished it in February. I read 1 new release, and I read 5 new authors. So that is how I'm going to do the updates about the books that I read. And while I was putting it together, I was telling you a little bit about each book in case you're interested in getting those books and reading them for yourselves. So that's it. That's going to complete January, and you kind of get a look at the books that I'm hoping to read in February. And I want to thank you so much for watching. Bye.